Okay, great. So it says we're live. I need to find the streaming link. And I will post the link in the chat window so you guys can copy and paste.
Okay, I'll drop it onto Twitter.
Yeah. I will share the now Slack. And I will be watching both chat windows.
Okay, cool.
This is exciting. Obviously, there is like 15-20 seconds of delay between.
Yeah, there will be. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll give it a 3-4 minutes. My Mac is on fire. I think it's trying to fly.
You got the fans ready for takeoff, yeah?
Yes, that was the terminology I was looking for. Thank you. So we still have a couple more minutes, so if you guys want to grab a drink, a snack, water, feel free to do so. I will announce when we're starting as well. We have started already live on YouTube, but for the content to start, we will announce. We will start in a minute. Okay, welcome everybody. I'm seeing lots of new names. So welcome to Open Security Summit, and thank you, Stu. This is your following, so thank you for bringing the new people to our community as well. We are Open Security Summit. We normally happen on site, but this year everything is done virtual, which gave us the opportunity to extend our audience as well. And also our sessions are not just the summit sessions. Now we have training sessions, full 2 weeks of training sessions. And this is week 2, day 1 of week 2. So we're today joined by Stu Peck, which most of you well know. He's quite active in the Openness social engineering community. He will be talking to us about the stages of social engineering and with some really cool examples. So if you are new to the community, this is a very collaborative community. Open Security Summit. We're not only from security backgrounds, we have a diverse set of people, and that is what makes the community tick better, because everybody participates, everybody challenges each other, and we're all here to learn from each other. Nobody knows it best, so we do encourage you to ask your questions and challenge the speaker, but in a respectful manner, obviously. So if you have any questions during the presentation, just feel free to unmute yourself, ask them, or if you're shy, you can use the chat in Zoom, or if you're on YouTube, the YouTube chat. I will be monitoring both, and I will voice the questions if Stu misses them. So everything we do is recorded. Openness is a big thing in the Open Security Summit. As the name implies, it's open. So there are no secrets here. We don't share secrets. We encourage openness so that the future generations can also benefit from it. It enables the progress. So everything we do is documented, gets documented after the summit. Check out the summit website to check the videos and other contents that we share during the sessions. And the communication continues in the Slack channels. So if you do not have an invite to our Slack channel, I will post it in the chat windows in both Zoom and on YouTube. And respect, yes, it's our code of conduct. You should be nice to each other. It's just a human thing to do. This is the list that we expect from everybody. We respect you, and we expect you to respect our speakers and all the others in the community. So, without further ado, I should stop speaking, and I shall give the microphone back to Stu.
Hello. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And it's an absolute pleasure to be here. So we've got just under 2 hours. So, oh yeah, I need to wait for you to finish sharing. Hang on. There you go. Right. Okay. So we've got about 2 hours or so. So I will, let me just see if I can do this. Yeah. Okay. Let's go. Right. Okay, so this is me. I'm going to talk to you guys about social engineering for everything from recon to execution. I guess from my perspective, I'm going to go through quite a few stages, but there's quite a lot to cover today. So hopefully that this will give you some insight into you know, if you've never done social engineering before, how you might go about it. If you're you know, what is I guess some of the tools, the techniques, the things that can happen as part of social engineering. And I'll talk about the reconnaissance. So I do a lot of work around OSINT. I just did a conference talk last night, 3-hour workshop last night. It finished at about 2 a.m. So that's good fun on OSINT. So there's some stuff from there. If you've seen some of that, I apologize, but there's also some newer stuff as well I put in there. And then I'll talk about some of the tools and resources. I've got a little mini challenge as well that I put together originally for London Ladies Hacking Society, which I've updated slightly as well. So there's some stuff in there, and then also I'll be releasing like 2 weekly challenges after that. So there's some good stuff to take away from this, and hopefully it'll be interesting. As Dida said, If you want to ask any questions, please do. That's really important. I like interactive sessions, so if you more than happy to chat to you. If you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, that'd be great. If not, ask a question in the kind of the Zoom chat or the YouTube chat, and I'll make sure that I answer it or get Dida to ask me the question and replay that question for you. Okay, great. Bit about me, who I am. Some of you may know who I am, but if you don't, this is me. Excuse me. I head up training education for Zero to Lab. I'm also a lead incident responder. I'm pretty well known for some of the social engineering work I do here in the UK and the US and Europe. I also am, I guess, known for the social engineering and open source intelligence work I do, and fairly recently part of a team that won the Trace Labs Global Missing Persons CTF 3 times. So and actually came second once as well. So out of the 4 CTFs they've run, we've come second and first 3 times. So OSINT's really important, and it's a great cause, I believe, as well. If you haven't checked out Trace Labs, please do. It's brilliant. They, you know, the OSINT for good kind of tagline is really important as well. So really important to talk about that. I also most people know me from my work at the Many Hats Club as well. So I'm a podcast host. I founded the community and recently ran and created IsolationCon, which we raised £10,333 or something like that for Médecins Sans Frontières or Doctors Without Borders this April. And some of the talks are online and some of them will be online soon. So if you haven't checked that out, obviously please do. And of course I do stuff in all that kind of stuff online and documents and blog posts and things like this. So I have an unusual journey into InfoSec, if you don't know it. I started off when I was at university doing a degree in ceramics, which is quite important, you know, for me at the time. Somehow I decided it wasn't so important after I left university, and then I decided to ended up in recruitment. And that's kind of where I learned a lot of my open source intelligence techniques that I'll talk about later. That was our kind of grounding back in the early 2000s, so 2004, 2005 type time. I started learning about open source intelligence, although it wasn't really called that. When I did it, it was more sort of Boolean string searching, and we used to find people, you know, there wasn't really many social media profiles back then. It wasn't really social media. So we used to find people's documents online, their CVs on unusual sources, and actually it was really, really good. And I found I had a massive interest in that. And then more recently, of course, I'd ended up in information security, and there's a whole backstory behind that. But yeah, so my journey in loosely is ceramics to information security, and I do quite a few things. So I love it. I really enjoy it. So I guess I'm going to say you might hear some things and see some things today that you might think I'm not saying. I promise you I am. I just think a little bit differently to some people and find some things which are quite interesting. And I've got loads of case studies to talk to you about as well. So, and like I said, Trace Labs, if you don't follow Trace Labs, please have a look at them. They're really good and they do some great work. And if you're interested in OSINT or anything like that, highly recommend it. So a really, really good cause. And actually you're finding real missing people and helping those cases. So there's a lot to be said for that. And it's a great training ground as well. And they have a good Slack channel and stuff like this. Right, okay. So there's quite a few challenges around some of the things that I see within the social engineering side. A lot of the breaches I investigate or the work that I do to investigate breaches is usual suspects. Someone clicks a phishing link or someone visits a website, they get hit by a drive-by attack, and there's a whole range of common kind of consequences that we see. You know, it's still a weapon of choice for criminals. We still see this quite time and time again. We see a lot of criminals use social engineering. It's a really easy way to target humans in the organization. And, you know, there are easy defenses forced to kind of stop these things, but we still see, you know, time and time again, social engineering being used. You know, human error is kind of, you know, one of those kind of common incidents that we see. So it's not, you know, malicious insiders, it might be accidental insiders and things like this. And the leaked credentials, I'm going to sort of maybe do a little demo of some of the stuff that you can find and some of the search engines that exist out there, where, you know, if you're looking at intelligence, you're looking at gathering intelligence on a target and looking to target them, then there's some really good free resources you can use to get a lot of information on the target really quickly, and that includes things like leak credentials and some of the breaches that exist. So there's a whole raft of information at the fingertips of attackers that can be highly effective and really kind of give them an upper edge. Yes, I didn't rename this slide. So this is the not actually rules of engagement. Sorry, apologies. I did a quick slide adjustment. This is actually about the kind of common rules of social engineering. So people tend to return favors if they see value of what's been offered. So this is used a lot by intelligence agents or police people to coerce their targets to cooperation. Commitment. This is like used if people give something up orally or agree something in writing to an idea. They're more likely to honor that commitment if they think it fits their self-image. That's used quite a lot. Social proof for me is like a really powerful social engineering technique that we see quite a few times. So there was like loads of studies in like the 60s and 70s where people would like walk into like the middle of the road and start looking at the clouds, like the scientists, to see if anyone would actually start doing it. And then loads of other people start walking around looking at the clouds, and no one knows what they were looking at. They just sort of followed suit. And then of course more and more people came in, and then the original people disappeared and just watched how many people would actually look at the clouds, not knowing why they were doing it. Social proof is really, really, really powerful, and actually can be used. So like fake news and things like this are really powerful kind of techniques to try and use kind of social proof to coerce people or to convince people to buy into sort of ideologies or things like this. Authority is still again a common technique that I use quite a lot. And if you pose to be someone from an authority figure, either through like a telephone call or something like that, you can get people to buy into stuff. You can do quite a few things using authority, but that requires some degree of commitment or some degree of legitimacy of your phone call, which we'll talk about later or something like that. Likability. People are more likely to be persuaded by people they like, or the people that are more friendly. They're less threatening, so therefore you can engage targets quite easily. And then urgency. People are influenced by fear of loss or negative impacts, missing deadlines, and it's used obviously quite commonly by like ransomware and stuff like this. So there's a whole range of things. Hackers, social engineering is obviously used by hackers, scammers, identity thieves, and a whole range of attackers. Identity thieves use social engineering quite a lot. Obviously, cyber criminals, governments use social engineering. It's used by everything, and social engineering really is influence. That's all it is, really. If you want to break it down to its core kind of components, it is all about influence. It's all about how do you target somebody, how do you gain influence, how do you reach that objective, and in the simplest way possible is using influence. And how do you maximize that influence? How do you manipulate someone into doing something, and how do you gain that trust really, really quickly? And there's a whole range of things that you can do, and we're going to talk about a whole bunch of those fairly shortly. And it kind of falls down to a few things. It falls down to understanding kind of needs and motivations. So obviously Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you apply that to social engineering, these kind of areas here are kind of self-reflecting. They have little impact on influence an individual. They can have impact, but you're not going to gain much kind of influence over that target over a longer period of time. When you start going into targeting someone's kind of love and belonging or kind of esteem, so you're talking about influencing friendship or sense of connection or respect or greed, you're kind of looking at someone's kind of behaviors and how you can influence those. That's a little bit more interesting when you start going to that. Obviously, it's like more difficult. And then, of course, to get someone highly engaged, you've got to look at targeting someone's core belief model, aligning to their personal goals. This is not something you can do on a short-term engagement. You're talking about long-term influence campaigns and things like this. So it's looking at how attacker moves through that kind of process, and how do you get engaged in that, and how do you kind of draw that kind of information from the targets is kind of what we're going to talk about in a bit. Really what we're looking at here is this kind of engagement model. This is something we're going to talk about a lot today. So we're going to talk a bit about how does an attacker target an organization or an individual? How do they maximize that engagement? What data can they gather on that? So this is the kind of open source intelligence component to that. How do we gather information on that target? What information is useful, and how can we reuse that information to create a pretext, a reason for getting engaged, a reason for calling, a reason for sending that email, a reason for being on premises, all those kind of different dimensions of social engineering. And then how do we engage? How do we engage that target? How do we what are the methods we're going to use? And we might use multiple methods to engage. And I've got some great examples of each of the kind of different methods you can use to engage a target, whether that's phishing, whether that's telephone phishing, so phishing, whether that's a physical intrusion, whether it's a combination of the three. And actually in all of my engagements, I may use a combination of the three to target an organization. So I might start off by sending a phishing email. I might follow that with a phone call. I might deliver a phone call and then try and get on someone's machine through some kind of remote desktop type service or something like that. Or I might actually use the phishing email or the telephone call to get myself an appointment to be there, a reason to be there. So someone is turning up to do this, and that's a reason to be there. So there's whole different things to do that. And then once you've engaged with that target, you exit. So you look at the exit strategy. So what is the objective of that engagement? That could be to for someone to click a link, obviously more obviously like phishing. It could be to gain some reconnaissance or intelligence from that individual you're talking to about the systems they use, maybe getting passwords and stuff, maybe getting account names, maybe getting intelligence about certain projects they're working on, or whether it's actually being on site and actually walking off with something. So I've managed to walk off with a whole range of things, or planting a device on the network. So there's a whole range of things that we will talk about today. So, in some cases, social engineers are not really too picky about who they target, depending on the criteria. There could be some criteria depending on the kind of campaign. So, ideally, you want to target someone with some privileged access. That's a quick win. Obviously, those people are going to be harder to target, and you're going to be targeting possibly slightly different systems and maybe looking at that attack slightly differently. Access to money, or at least data are one step removed, and someone who's ideally got a good digital footprint. It makes it a lot easier to kind of craft very specific phishing emails if you can do that. So some examples could include some of the examples I've used in the past is, to get a really good spear phishing email sent out to someone is using data, their own data against them. So examples I've talked about in the past are things like people who leave testimonials, right? And they're a testimonial for some kind of IT company or some kind of supplier or something like that. And then all you do is you spoof an email from that supplier, you register a domain, and you do a typo squatting. So you change some of the characters within that domain, register it, send a phishing email, and in that phishing email you may say, hey, we're updating our marketing material, and we've changed some of the context of your testimonial. If you want to check that, do you want to just check that and check you're happy with it? Please find it attached, or something like that. And then typically speaking, those kind of phishing emails work really well because it's something that someone else has said. So they've given a testimonial to someone or written a testimonial or a case study, and they're more likely to look at it because it's someone's changing their words, and people don't like that. Or they want to see what's been changed to make sure it's still relevant or still got the right context, or it may be, or maybe they might want to check they're happy with it. So there's going to be a way that someone at some point in that email chain will click that phishing email, and then you can execute your attack. So these are the kind of things which work really, really well. And then of course, to kind of do that, you need to do that kind of gathering of open source intelligence. And it's kind of vital for that kind of pretext creation. So if you're an attacker, or if you do it open source intelligence, or you are currently a social engineer, or you're looking at that as a potential route, the most important skill is OSINT, in my opinion, because if you don't gather enough intelligence on your target, you're never going to find the right pretext that will work. The two go pretty much hand in hand. So being able to gather good intelligence on your target or targets is vitally important, and attackers will do that. They have unlimited amounts of time, they have unlimited amounts of, in some cases, of course, so you're looking at, whereas someone like myself may have a number of days to do that kind of reconnaissance, an attacker may have weeks or maybe a month or maybe longer. So, and the amount of information you can gather in like a week on somebody is insane. Usually we can get most of the data within like a few hours to like a day or 2 days. So if you're constantly monitoring a target, you might find that one piece of information that's just been posted that's really, really useful and relevant that you can then execute against and actually get involved. And also don't forget that social media is also a really good attack mechanism to start that process as well. So trying to get someone to click links or influence people over social media is quite important. So obviously using things like Tinder, all the kind of social media kind of sites, that there's been quite a few social engineering campaigns over pretty much social media or dating sites, dating apps. So create fake sock puppet accounts to engage with that target, and then go down the kind of love route, sort of influence to try and gain someone's trust over a period of time, and then use that to actually infiltrate them or get them to share information. And that's been done over Tinder, attackers targeting military professionals, personnel over Tinder and things like this. Where they massive OPSEC fail and shared maybe too much information about projects and things like this, dropping into conversation. So it's a kind of tried and tested method that's been applied to different kind of mechanisms. And then of course, pretexting, as I think I've talked about, is the creating an invented scenario used to engage the victim and target that victim in a manner to increase the chance they'll divulge or give away too much information. Or perform some actions that would be unlikely in ordinary circumstances. And I think I'm going to show a couple of those later rather than talk about it now. But there are a whole range of things that you can do to kind of engage those targets. And of course the engagement, engage and exit. Look at what's the outcome. So what are we trying to do? What's that plan? What's the target scenario? For either an attacker or for someone who's trying to test an organization to find out what their engagement model is and what they're trying to find out. So whether that's actually, again, I've had scenarios where I've actually had to break in somewhere and walk off with something sensitive. I've had kind of ones where I've had to plant something on a network. I've had ones where I've had to get into a certain part of the building and then actually take photos of like Kanban walls and things like this. So like espionage type stuff. Whole range of things. Find out about private kind of project names and code names and what see if there's anything out there on it, or whether I can gain any intelligence. I've actually joined developer sessions and things like this as a potential fake contractor, and just sat there and just listened and asked some questions and things like this. Whole range of things, right? And the more ridiculous the situation, I think the more I've actually probably done in some respects. So I haven't seen any questions. Oh no, here we go. There might be some questions. Here we go. Are there any questions so far before I move on?
Not yet.
Good. Okay, that's good. Right. Okay. So, and by the way, if you want to ask any questions about any of this, please do, because I like questions, and the more difficult the question, the better as well. There's a little challenge. So, these are the kind of things that, if you want to try and establish some kind of trust, these are the kind of the components that you want to look at. So you want to look at, in fact, there we go. I'll ask a question to the room. Which one of these on the outside of the 4 do you think are the most important? You can shout it out as well if you want. Or you can drop it in the chat.
Someone says all of them.
All of them? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's good. Any other takers?
Gemma says credibility. Didymus says likability.
Okay.
Dave says all of them, but empathy. Karen says empathy. Okay.
So I'll tell you that, okay, they are all important, but the one that, and Gemma, I might have seen a similar talk before, credibility is the clincher, right? So if you don't have credibility, then no one's going to believe that you're genuinely have empathy, right? generally, again, if you haven't got credibility, they're going to be questioning why you're engaging as authority figure. You're not that authority figure. You don't have authority. And again, likability, people will question your intentions. So you can go any of those routes, but the most important thing to kind of look at is how credible you are. And that comes through good research. That comes through the OSINT side, the scenario, the reason you're calling. If you pick your target correctly, and you know enough about your target, you will be immediately credible because you'll have enough information that they will believe you because you've done your research. You know who their colleagues are. You know enough about the business. You know that they have multiple sites and you're working in a different region and you know people in that region. There's a whole range of things that you can present as a scenario. You are their supplier and you have enough information about their supplier. You've managed to get their telephone numbers and you're able to spoof those telephone numbers so it looks like it's coming from that supplier. There's a whole range of things that you can do to build that initial credibility, and then it's then how you build upon that credibility. It's important that establishes some kind of trust. Okay. And you can't immediately do it, right? There are circumstances where you can catch someone off guard and they'll divulge information, but sometimes you have to play the softly game, and sometimes you have to go in hard and you have to go in with the authority kind of card and say, whatever it may be. But these are the kind of things, credibility for me they're all very important, absolutely. But credibility is the one that if you don't get that right, it doesn't matter what you do after that. It all falls down like a house of cards. So we kind of talk about kind of usual suspects, and there are obviously quite a few. So obviously we all know about phishing, baiting, pretexting.
We do have a question.
A question.
What would you recommend for an introvert to practice social engineering and social skills?
So could you repeat that question? Sorry, my headset cut out.
Yeah, what would you recommend for an introvert to practice social engineering and social skills?
Well, that's a really good question. Okay, so also we're social distancing at the moment, so it's always very difficult to kind of say in a current situation it's quite difficult. So a lot of these things, if we go back to normal world when bars and pubs and clubs and things like that happen, the best way to learn is to try and practice some of your pretext, not on the general public because that's not very moral and I wouldn't recommend that. But like I used to try and set myself challenges to try and get into nightclubs and talk my way into nightclubs and things like this where I'm not on the guest list. So pick a really kind of exclusive nightclub and try and talk your way into it. Now you probably will fail a couple of times and it's very hard, it's very nerve-wracking. That's a great way to do it, and also go and talk to people at conferences, and not in the sense of trying to social engineer them, but just to try and engage in conversations. And the way to engage in those kind of conversations is to ask lots of questions and get people to talk. So you want to be in a situation where the other person is talking 80% of the time, you're talking 20% of the time, and that's how you kind of learn those social skills, right? You learn and listen to people and ask questions, and you shouldn't be doing it to develop your social engineering skills, but you should be doing it because you're genuinely interested as well, right? Because that sounds really bad. Just go to conferences and ask lots of questions and then everyone will blame me forever, right? It's more about trying to engage. I used to be quite introverted actually a long time ago. I used to hate presenting, and I absolutely hated it, right? Like I would get so nervous. So I just used to go to like there was like these kind of like meetup events, not like the ones we have now, but like years ago, and they were just like, you just have like a lightning talk type thing. You'd go and talk for like 10 minutes or 5-10 minutes on any subject, and you used to go to those and just practice, right? So if you can find those kind of events where they're like lightning talks, you can get used to talking in front of a bunch of strangers about a topic that you're passionate about or a topic you're really interested in. That also helps with that situation of where you're going to be faced into like a difficult situation you don't like. There are a whole range of things you can do, and I'm pretty sure I wrote something on this as well a while ago about building social skills. So I'll see if I can dig it up and send it. If you let me know who that question was from, I can drop something to them as well.
Yeah, I'll text it to you. And we do have a session after Stu's session tonight about how to use improv comedy as a social engineering tool. I encourage you to attend that as well.
Oh yeah, that'd be brilliant. In fact, if I've got time after this, which I'm sure I do, I'd love to listen to that as well, because improv comedy would be brilliant for that kind of stuff, right? Humor, actually, humor is the best way to disarm anything. I've always found. I usually use humor against myself, so in any kind of situation. So that's quite good if you disarm yourself a little bit. And people then are less threatened. But humor is a really powerful tool. If you get someone to laugh, they like you. So that disarms the situation in any of those kind of cases. So yeah, improv is a great way to get into any kind of situation. Obviously, you can't use jokes to get into like buildings. That doesn't work. But I've tried that. It doesn't work. Can't crack a few jokes and the security guard goes, "Hi, you're a funny guy. You can come in." That doesn't quite work. But in most cases, when you're faced in a situation, a bit of humor goes quite well. It de-escalates a situation quite a lot. And I hope that answers that question as well. So I can't see it. So for some reason, I can't see questions anymore.
They thank you.
Okay, brilliant, fantastic. All right, cool. So obviously, as I talked about, there are like things like phishing, baiting, pretexting, phishing, quid pro quo, that type of stuff, and we're going to talk about all those later. And I guess somehow my last thing's disappeared there. Never mind. But I want to talk about the power of OSINT for me, because that's the important thing at the beginning, is to kind of talk about why OSINT's important and how powerful it can be. And there's a couple of situations I'm going to go through in a bit as well. But so you need to search, find out. A bit of a joke, but actually not really. It's about anything that's publicly available, right? So we're talking about any data that's publicly available that you can search, whether that's also on the deep web or the dark web, if you want to call it that as well. That if it's still technically publicly available information, unless it's hidden behind a paywall or something like that. In most cases, you can still find that intelligence if you can join that community or join that kind of service. So, I consider open source intelligence to include things like forums, any publicly available information on a person, anything that obviously you don't have to, when you're not breaching accounts, right? So it's the point where you are going into someone, there's a paywall or there's a logging screen. That's pretty much not intelligence at that point. You're then talking about breaching someone's accounts and also committing crime. That's obviously very bad. But open source intelligence isn't. It's about finding publicly available information, aggregating that information, and making use of that information to understand, in the context of this talk, what someone might be interested in, what someone might be doing. Are there any things that you can use to gain access to that organization? So badges, people posting badges online and stuff like this. Obviously that's very common and we see that all the time, and I found badges pretty much every week. If I'm doing an engagement against an organization, I'll find badges all the time, and then being able to recreate those badges and being able to use that to kind of show some legitimacy is obviously quite important. Obviously, one of the recommendations that I give, and I think we talked about this last night, the talk we did, is about doing intelligence on yourself. So you should, if you haven't, and if you don't do it regularly, you should be doing some form of open source intelligence on yourself to understand where your exposures are. And the more you do, the more you realize the information's out there. So the better you get, and the more exposure you have. And I kind of take people through this when I do sort of workshops and talks and things like this about, well, how would you do that? How would you go through that? It's not just about Googling yourself, although that's where it starts. It's about understanding all the different facets to your information. Okay, so what information is there in the background of your images, one of your profile pictures? Or for example, you use Facebook and you've left your friends lists publicly available. Okay, so now I can start working out your social circles. I can work out your work circles. I can work out family members. I can work out a whole range of things, and start mapping out your social socializations, who you're likely to spend more time with, who you probably trust. Maybe work out your location from some of the people that you socialize with the most, and obviously maybe that's photos of you drinking with your friends or whatever it may be, obviously pre where we are at the moment, and all that kind of stuff. So there's a huge amount of data you can gather just from the background of images as well, working out locations and pivoting stuff from there. I'll kind of probably talk a bit about that as well. But also it's about trying to understand what it is we're trying to get from a target. So we're going to look at, are we going to scrape their social media? Are we going to look at domain mapping, looking at an organization's domains to work out where there's weaknesses there? We can look at tech stack recon, which I will talk a bit about later, because again, there's some really quick wins. You don't need to look at what publicly available services they have. You can start looking at what they post online to actually work out their tech stack, which I'll touch on later. And you'll kind of do some data harvesting. So you'll look at some automated connection. Sometimes you might need to do automated. I'm a big believer in actually manual investigation, following your gut, following your instincts, and actually following the data. And in most cases, I find a lot more through that kind of investigative. If we're looking at people, if we're looking at big companies and domains, then obviously automated is absolutely key. And then harvesting that information and starting to kind of drill down into it later is obviously quite important. But if we're looking at individuals in an organization, manual is the way to go, because I find so much more from that. Obviously, you want to be looking at.
Stu, there's a question.
Yes, good.
So would you use some sort of specific mapping system to map out the social system of the individual, like some kind of mind mapping software or something?
Yeah, so I use Multigo, but I don't use transforms. So what I probably do is or draw.io or something like that to map out. So there's a couple of investigations I've done recently where I've actually manually mapped out that person's social interactions, their key people. So I've grouped them into like friends, family, all this kind of stuff. Yeah, someone's drawing on my screen. Who's that? Yeah, there you go. So friends, family, all that kind of stuff. And there's a whole range of stuff that that you can see there. That there's actually looking at Multigo and looking at possibly some investigations around tools like Hunchly as well, which will look at capturing a lot of that metadata, which you can then pull into tools like Multigo to map out. But yeah, Multigo is pretty good. I just wouldn't use the transforms if I was you, because they are, although they're quite great for mapping stuff out, you probably have to delete half the data it picks up unless you've got a really good transform that you've created yourself. Typically, they're just good mind mapping tools, or draw.io or Lucidchart as well is quite good, although it's a bit of a pain. I prefer Multigo, it's quicker. But yeah, so they're the tools that I'd use if I'm going to use any kind of tools. I hope that answers the question as well. And then you want to kind of aggregate that data as well. So you want to look at things like Hunchly, as I said, to scrape a lot of data. It's a paid tool. There's other free tools you can use as well. Aggregate that data into some kind of pulling the data apart, pulling the metadata apart, looking at common trends, common things that you might want to explore a bit further. And then going back to the well if you need to, and kind of looking at pivoting from that data. So during like our Trace Labs investigations that we did onto missing people, we would take that case and we would then look at that missing person, and the only piece of information you're given is a name and say where they were last seen or where they're potentially located, when they disappeared. And then that's it. So you've got to then start off searching, and you've got to go into different areas, and you've got to look at try and find their social media account, who their friends circles are, information about that target. So intelligence about what kind of identifying marks there are, because what we found in lots of cases when you're looking at sort of missing people is they have maybe potentially 4 or 5 different Facebook accounts, things like this. And so some people might have like different Facebook accounts, one that's more public facing, one that's maybe for a smaller group of friends that they want to hide from work colleagues or something like that. So yeah, you have to really kind of drill down to that data and really map it out, and then really kind of pivot from that data to other sources and use that new knowledge to kind of really go back to the well and try and get more intelligence on that target, which I'll talk about as well. Hope that kind of answers the question on that as well. Can't see any more questions, but then there we go. So look, I should have this file up over here actually. All right, okay. So moving on to the next one is of course, so it's in terms of intelligence, we're looking at, if you want to do a lot of this stuff, you probably just need, you don't need to use Kali Linux really, although a lot of people do, or they'll use Buscador or something like that, or Parrot or any other kind of distro. Really, most cases you're using a browser and you're using your investigative gut, and you're using a bunch of tools and resources to kind of pull that data down from. Yes, of course, you are going to use potentially some tools at some point, especially if you're processing a lot of data. But if you're doing it from a social engineering point of view, trying to create pretext, you don't really need to go too deep into the weeds, unless you're looking at targeting a lot of individuals and you're looking to build a large list of targets. So again, it's about trying to understand that. And of course, I'll just see if I can bring this up. Again, like starting point, as we kind of see quite a few cases, things like social media, obviously Insta, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok's pretty good actually at the moment as well for intelligence. Snapchat, LinkedIn. Talked about this last night. Sort of Plenty of Fish, still quite a big site for dating profiles, or Tinder, which is actually a lot harder actually to get information from. But there are advanced techniques for getting information from Tinder. Obviously, we probably won't talk about it on here, but there's quite a few things to get intelligence on your targets. So it's really trying to understand, where you're starting from. So what's your kind of mechanism for targeting that company or that individual? How they're going to, what information do you need, what they're going to most respond to, maybe pivoting from their email addresses, their home addresses, telephone numbers, profile pictures, intelligence, gaming handles and things like this are quite powerful as well. And then obviously that work intel as well. So a company, GitHub repo, blogs, all that kind of stuff, quite important. So yeah, trying to gather as much intelligence as possible, quickly as possible, is primary for this, and it's trying to gain that picture into that individual's work habits, behaviors, all those kind of things as well. And it's just kind of what it's like, right? It's like pretty much this. It's like when two people go for a walk, but only one of them knows about it, right? It's kind of pretty much what it is. Okay, you should be like a ghost. You shouldn't leave any footprint. You shouldn't interact. You shouldn't really contact that target in the initial recon stage, because you don't want them to know that there's any reconnaissance there or raise any questions. So from a social engineering point of view, you do want to be a ghost for the first part to build up your pretext, and then when you engage, then it's really important that you've got all that data at your fingertips, so they can't question, or hang on a second, that someone was looking at me last week. Why is it suspicious you're talking to me about this? So I guess it's kind of it's been quite a dark presentation, so it's time to put some shades on, bit of light. I'll talk about the power of pivoting using social media. So I did this massive mind map quite a while ago, maybe like to say back in January or something like that, February time. And this might, I was trying to work out from all the kind of investigations that I've done, and I've done with some of the colleagues on some of the my own OSIP projects, and some of the work I've done on CTFs and things like this, and trying to work out where this mind map is. Seems to be someone's drawn over my screen as well. Let's see if I can get rid of that. Can I get rid of that or not? See some red lines on my screen.
Let me try as well.
I've got a razor. There you go. That can get rid of those. Look at that. There you go. There you go. Perfect. Right. I'm going to stick you over there as well. Okay. There's some more. They keep appearing. Someone's having fun drawing on my screen. Was that you? Are you doing that, Dinah?
No, I don't do them, but please, guys.
There you go. It's good fun, right? I like a bit of fun. Right. Anyway, so you can draw those lines maybe a bit later. Especially this bit confused me on this bit otherwise. But there's like if you look at things like sort of Twitter and maybe starting with someone's email address or something like that, you can kind of pivot from that quite quickly into multiple areas. So if you get, a lot of people do reuse email addresses or similar email addresses. Profile pictures, if you have the perfect profile picture, it's taken from the right angle and it looks good, you're more likely to reuse that at some point. So reverse image searching is quite good. Obviously, LinkedIn's quite easy to get work colleagues, but Facebook as well. You can pivot from LinkedIn to then find their Facebook friends. Maybe Snapchat's quite a good one as well. You can get some good intelligence from Snapchat. Obviously, your phone is, in most cases, the window to a lot of your apps. So again, you can get a lot of intelligence from people's phones, what OS they use. A lot of that information is also scraped into some of the apps as well. Location data, still quite possible to get a lot of location data. It might not be metadata in images, so like EXIF data, but it might be location data from where people are posting stuff, or maybe tagging locations, or maybe actually intelligence in the images that they're sharing that you can use to build up their location. So there's a whole range of things you can do. Passwords, of course, we all know about passwords and people reusing passwords and things like this. But a lot of the data breaches, so a lot of the 15 odd billion records that have been leaked out there are publicly available. So if you know where to go and you know how to index a lot of this, you can search a lot of this data. So you can take someone's email address or someone's actual password, you can reverse search it and actually find out their home address or some other information, or their gaming handles. And for me, gaming handles just seem to be the gold mine of intelligence. Like Steam, you can just get so much from Steam. You can get people's location data, you get their friends, who they interact with. You can get we can work out possibly, and I think we talked about a bit like this last night, is you can kind of work out intelligence on who people most play games with and how often they play games. So actually maybe they might be really close to that person, so that's quite useful information. The same with like Xbox and PlayStation gaming handles as well. You can really see where people reuse them, and in some cases they contain their full name, or they might contain a handle which they use elsewhere, so that ties into their Discord, that might tie into their Twitter, that might tie into their Instagram, or before possibly their Tinder in some cases, although not always, very rarely. So you can kind of see where all of this kind of stuff links together, and it's just using very few sites that I've just displayed on here. You can build up a really quick picture for someone. This is how easy it is to pivot. Any questions on this, by the way? No, that's good. No questions is good.
It's very clear.
Very clear. Good. I like that. Okay, we're another way into this, so we've got plenty of time. If you do have any questions, please let me know, because listening to my dulcet tones for 2 hours, I'm sure will be interesting. Right. Okay. So how do attackers use this? Really what we're looking at here is we're looking at creating these kind of pretexts, so collection of the OSINT, as we talked about, processing that information, creating that kind of scenario for attack. So we're looking at for me, Glassdoor's pretty good. There's a whole range of things. Tinfo Leaks pretty good. There's a whole range of stuff for like developers, like Nerdy Data I found was quite useful. It's just loads and loads of information, and I've got a whole tool set that I released at least publicly in like last month or something, which I'll share with everyone here and take you through. But there's a whole range of data that you can use to kind of do this, and it's pretty good fun. But really, for me, it's like that kind of investigator's mindset that's quite important. So when you are looking into a target, you want to think about every piece of data as a clue. You want to think about, what do I know? Do they reuse their profile pictures? I've kind of talked about this, but what can I learn from them as a target? How can I use that to create a pretext? How can I use that to look at building that kind of profile on them, so I can then go in armed with a huge amount of information. And we are creatures of habit, and this is really important. Really important. Like there's a whole range of stuff that we can look at, and like pattern of life. So old world type tactics that we'd use is that someone gets the same kind of train or same kind of route to work. I've done a case study I can talk about. I was in a meeting, this is probably last year sometime. I was in a meeting with a potential customer or client type thing, and we were talking about OSINT, and we're talking about digital footprints, and this finance director, I guess, of CFO was like, well, you can't really find much information on me. I don't really have a digital footprint. So I basically said, well, okay, that's what I'll do. Give me 45 minutes, just 45 minutes, and I'll come back and share with you everything I found. Okay, and I'll just use the browser, just your name, don't need anything else. Just give me 45 minutes. And so 45 minutes, I came back with his, all his email addresses, all of his location data, so I found out where he lived, and I also knew what car he drove. I knew pretty much most of the kind of password information that was out there on him. I knew which gym he went to. I knew he cycled, and liked swimming. And so there were kind of in his local area, there were like 2 like gyms, major gyms, and there was only one that had a swimming pool and like like some kind of cycling track and something like that as well. So I realized that's the one he would go to. So I showed him the route he would take, and then talked to him about, well, actually, if I was going to target you, I'd wait for you to turn up to the gym. You'd probably go in the morning, because it looks like that the evening will be quite busy. So you're probably a morning person from what I can read about you and the running activities and some of the posts and some of your apps that you've got as well. So he was part of some of the fitness apps that I could check. They had a public profile and saw the fitness regime he had as well. So I could see that usually he would go like early morning doing running, and some of the plans were like some of the classes he was talking about as well. So I could work out which classes he was going to. And then I could say, right, so I'd turn up in the gym and I'd probably wait for you to put something into a locker, and I'd probably pick the lock of your locker, watching you do that, and then take your phone, clone it or steal it or whatever, and crack it. That's it, done. So, you know, that's 45 minutes, right? And he was like, yeah, okay, that's a bit scary. So, you know, there's kind of different scenarios you can use. So it doesn't have to be a work scenario. You can use the kind of personal life scenario to steal a work device or get hold of a work device, or there's a whole range of things you can do. We were talking about 3D printing keys last night as well. Something I've been talking about, and I know that my co-presenter last night, Cyber Viking, one of my co-presenters, was talking about how he 3D printed keys from people's photos, and I've shown how to do that as well. So and actually in customer kind of engagements, we've done the same. Like literally only 2 weeks ago, I found one in a photograph that could be easily 3D printed, and it was just in the background, but it was perfectly in focus. So, you know, what you put in an image can be used to kind of against you, I guess. And things like this, you know, quite important characteristics you might want to build intelligence on, although not necessarily for social engineering, but can be quite important if you want to identify targets. So like any kind of identifying marks or characteristics or habits are quite important. So if you know that person smokes and there's a smoking area, that's a way to engage them in that smoking area. In fact, most companies are broken into have been through smoking areas and things like this.
So we have a question.
Yep.
If you did search a target by their name, but it didn't give you any results, what's your next move?
So it's very rare that I won't find anything from a name, but you can then look at company. So I might then say search their name and a company they work for, or I might start searching on article, doing document searches or article searches, or I might start looking at some of the breach records. I might start looking at potential permutations of email addresses. There's a whole range of things you can start looking at. I might look at the Internet Archive to see if maybe they used to have a social media account or used to have something that's been deleted. Maybe they've done a digital footprint cleanup, and maybe they are on the Internet Archive, the Wayback Machine. There's a whole range of things. There's a good case study I can talk about for one of the missing persons cases for the Trace Labs kind of CTF. We were given a name of a person. They went missing quite a while ago, and they didn't have any social media at all, nothing. And it's quite common for me to find people. I do a lot of exec work around this as well. They don't have any social media, so you have to look at other avenues, usually family members or close family relatives or things like this. And that's what we did. We looked at okay, they don't have any social media at all. They don't have a LinkedIn. They don't have a Facebook. They don't have anything, right? There's literally nothing. There's very limited public records. They were in a country, you know, it wasn't the UK. It was outside the UK. So there should have been public records, but there were very little. So we then I actually found an article where this person's name was mentioned and the family member was quoted. One of the family members was quoted. So then I used to build the search around that particular family member, found their Facebook profile, found some images of the person that had gone missing, and then used that to then find their other family members and other colleagues and potential ex-work colleagues. And then a whole range of intelligence came out around this person and their potential, you know, contacts they may have known about, or you know, some intelligence you could build from that. However, if you're put into that situation where someone doesn't have a name, you could try different spellings of people's names. They might have used their middle name, for example, as a first name. It's quite a common tactic that execs use. So they might not use their first name. They might use their middle name as their first name, and that throws people off sometimes. Or they might you know, there's a whole range of things that you can look at, and there's sort of sneaky tactics that people do to throw you off the scent. And so you just try different things. And there's a, you know, if they're quite well known, then of course that's easier. But yeah, the less well known the person, the more you can hide. So if you try and search me, there are my name, and I think Dida, you're testament to this, right? Because you did the little CTF thing that I put together. Finding the right me is actually quite hard.
I don't remember, but I did find your birth date in the end. Cool.
Yeah. Yes, I know, and it's you know, so there is ways of doing it, right? But you know, and so it's trying to find that information and actually trying to find the right person and the right kind of going back to verification of data. So you might be dealing with 5 or 6 different records that don't have profiles, profile pictures, for example. So there's nothing to reference against. So you have to then start looking at other sources of information to try and validate which source might be right. So it's kind of going back to trusting your sources or verifying your sources. It's vitally important. So I hope that kind of answers the question as well. I don't know if it has. I can't see which chat this is in. So I'm just gonna say, yeah, okay. I'm assuming it did. If it didn't, I'll answer it a bit later, maybe, because I've realised that now time is upon me again. So yeah, of course, behavioural languages, patterns, colloquial quirks, and things like this are really important. So I want to show a brief demo. I did some stuff on developers a while ago. I did a talk, and in fact, I know that Sam will know this one. So, but I've kind of changed this a little bit to kind of protect the innocent. But I did a bit of I always do like a OSINT on, if I'm going to do a talk somewhere, I'll do OSINT on. Oh, okay. There's a question there. Would you put all these characteristic points into data for an actual file like tattoos? Okay, so it's more used for recognition of targets. So the question was, would you put all these specific points into data into actual files like tattoos? I'm just wondering on, or how, if you balance what might be less relevant. So if it's a commercial work that I'm doing, for example, like for a customer, something like that, then of course that's not relevant, right? Whether someone has a tattoo or not isn't really relevant. But if it's intelligence on working out if it's a target and I'm trying to target someone specifically, and I know they have a tattoo, and I can identify that person because they have a tattoo, it makes identification of the target more interesting and more relevant. I wouldn't necessarily mention it in any reports, but it's a characteristic that helps make sure you're working with the right target, for example, or piercings. You know, they have piercings or they wear glasses or they smoke or stuff like that. Those are the kind of things which are quite important. The same as the behavioral characteristics, like language patterns. We all type in a certain way. And so that actually helps identify that person. There's been many cases where people have been hiding behind fake account sock puppets, but we're able to identify them because of their language patterns. And you can automate some of this stuff, but you can also do it through manual verification and searching and stuff like this. So you just have to get into the mindset of doing it. And colloquial quirks as well give away someone's location really, really easily. So even just in the UK, like there's northern quirks, there's southern quirks. Then you've got US colloquial quirks as well that, you know, people certainly say certain things. So yeah, it's you know, you'll be able to pick up someone's location from just that sort of information there, and then start to specifically kind of delve into a search and stuff like that. I'll be asked lots of questions. Another question was same person. Do you encounter a bit of information that you first thought was unimportant and irrelevant, but later found to be very useful? Yes, every piece of information, every piece of data is useful from an intelligence point of view. So you may not think about it initially, but so I capture everything and scrape everything and index everything and log everything when I'm doing an investigation. And then I will then review it. So actually, I might find a piece of data that I don't think is actually massively important at the beginning. And then actually further on down my investigation path, I actually work out that's a critical piece of information that allowed me to find this, but I didn't realize at the time until I got stuck. or maybe I didn't review it. I just collected it and then actually started to review some data and realized, oh, actually I missed this piece of information here. This is really, really important. And actually now might have opened up the search. So there are cases where what you seem to be unimportant or inconsequential at the beginning of your search, you may realize actually down the line that certain piece of information, such as a certain photograph or a certain colleague or something like that, or a document or something, actually becomes like the pivotal point of the investigation, because it allows you to look into something that you didn't realize the importance of. So yeah, I guess the mindset here is to collect everything, index everything, and then review it later once you've kind of got to a certain level of investigation. You've kind of gone through your first pass. And here's a kind of example of this, right? So this person I was doing a search on for a presentation I did, I think it was last year, maybe, I don't know how long ago it was. It was a while ago. And there was a certain place I was presenting. This is obviously public anyway, it's online. And I just looked at their GitHub profile and their profile picture, and I found out what repositories they're in. And from there, I was able to pivot to find out them on, what sort of sites they have, found their LinkedIn profile just from an image, right? Yes, you know that one. Okay, good. And then from there, their Facebook profile, their Twitter profile, their LinkedIn profile, and from there, find out reverse image searching to find more of the things. And and also, their website and things like this. And there's a whole range of stuff, right, that you can find. And it's very hard to give examples of this, right? But found something else, found they're like pugs and things like this. And so there's a whole range of scenarios you could take from this, right? And then what accounts they may have been pawned in, because I got their email address. That took me about 2 minutes. And that's kind of how these things kind of appear, right? And how quickly you can find something. This took me like 10 minutes or something to find this, and if you give me like an hour, give me like a day, you can find everything, right? And it takes me back to some of the stuff that I like to talk about when you're doing recon on customers. Like the most valuable source, if you're doing like a pen test, or if you're doing some kind of social engineering engagement, or just some recon organization, job boards and job sites are the most valuable, just the most valuable initial recon on an organization. If you look at this particular case, this is for like a security operations role I just found this afternoon, so I just thought I'd use this as an example. So you can look at what SIEMs they've got, what IDS they've got. Yeah, exactly. Someone's saying in the chat, HR people are the best way to recon, and I fully agree. They are. If you want to find out about jobs, apply for jobs. I've actually been through an interview, a fake interview, well, a real interview, but I turned up with a fake CV and everything to work out a bit about a company. In fact, there's sometimes people have actually done, I know people have actually done interviews, gone through the first stage process to recon the building before actually then doing an actual real attack. So, and their face is slightly familiar, so they can get in again and use it as a different scenario. So, be wary of that as well, because you're letting someone into the building, they can disappear and just disappear, right? After the interview. So I need to use the toilet, and if they don't let them out of the building, or they've got like a way to get back in again, or say they forgot something, and security guards have recognized them being familiar. So there's different ways of doing it, and it just depends on your kind of, again, how the type of organization you're targeting. But this kind of data is really good for recon. And that kind of really helps, just to build up a picture of what you might be facing if you're doing like a phishing campaign or something like that. So and of course it's like dorking, which I'm going to talk a bit about later, but this particular case, this Trello one, which I still love, and I still find stuff in Trello every day. This is a development environment where there's and this is a gaming environment where I found loads of bugs and loads of issues, and actual real big issues in the code over here as well. So and then you can start doing things like looking at GitHub repos and things like this. So you can sort of start looking at people putting their RSA private keys into commit files and things like this. So you can look at people's commits, and you can look at people's removing private RSA keys. I was talking about this literally 2 weeks ago on a call. And I just said, I don't think that people are still doing that. And I found, I could do a search now and find some more today. There's still new ones all the time. Private API keys and things like this as well. They're just there all the time. So so you actually get the actual private API keys. There's also some services that leave them embedded in websites and things like this. So just gonna make sure I might actually got my audio enabled. I can't remember if I did. Did I have it enabled? Yeah, I did. Okay, fine. So yeah, there's a whole range of stuff that you can do, right? So it's just about trying to, again, this data is really important for these kind of purposes. This video, I know some people have seen it before. Yes, it is. So yeah, it is Java. Security tokens in GitHub. Yes, there are. I found everything. I actually found also a couple of sites where API keys were embedded into the source code as well. I forgot to remove them. I was shown a couple recently by someone else that I know that also found a couple and showed me. So, you know, people forget to remove stuff. All it's in comments as well. They haven't commented it out. Hard-coded secrets is great fun. So, you know, why social engineer when people just leave stuff laying around and let you in? So yeah, all free or have free unlimited services via their API. It's brilliant, right? Allegedly. So yeah. So this video here kind of shows a bit about why this is quite an issue.
Oh, hi, can I help?
Can I have hot chocolate?
What's the name?
Joel.
What was the name?
Alex.
Alex. There you go, Johnny.
Cheers.
If you like our Facebook page, we give you a free hot drink and a free pastry.
We have a new like for Damien. We have a new like for Damien.
Hey, Carly, are you standing by?
Standing by. Hi there, can I help?
Yeah, I just liked your Facebook page.
Okay, I'll search Facebook now.
I'm searching Google.
I have a phone number.
I've got his email address.
Okay, Carly, are you ready?
For information on Damien.
Yep, I am.
Mother's maiden name is he banks with
Carly, this is the girl coming in now with the blue scarf.
What's her name? Nicholas.
Nicholas. His date of birth, 7th of May. She lives at 38A.
Just be a couple of seconds.
2 children, age 4 and 6. Previous address. She's got photos.
Yep, got it.
Thank you.
Damien, age 26 and a fitness instructor.
How do you know that?
Brody, who goes to UCL. Martin, who went to South Thames College. Assistant psychologist at Great Ormond Street.
How did you know?
That is... I don't really understand.
Oh, better?
You know I'm a Christian as well.
Oh, yeah, we know everything about you, Martin. Thank you. Nice to meet you, Anna from Russia.
So yeah, that video is still one of my favorites. It's an old vid. I think it's a couple of years old. I think it was originally AXA. I think that shared that originally, but yeah, still a great video. And still makes me laugh every time I see it. So, and I can't get off my screen here. Don't do it again. I have a phone call that I play quite a lot. If you haven't heard it, great. If you have heard it, I apologize in advance. But trying to get a social engineering call into less than like 5 minutes is actually quite difficult because usually these calls go on for a while. But this is one I've done many times, and it's quite a good one. It's quite entertaining, and it shows how easy it is to get someone's username and password just over the phone. And I target quite a few organizations using telephone phishing. It's quite a popular technique that I use, and it really helps kind of understand, you know, if you've done your research properly. In some cases, you don't even need to do research. You could literally just call up an organization if you know that they're not training their people. You can do a couple of profiling calls to work out if they train people or not. Pretend to call from a security company or something like that to work out what they do, and then work out whether they're exposed or not. And then actually, as a potential target, you could social engineer them, obviously with permission, of course. Keep saying that. So attackers don't need to do that, right? They telephone social engineering works. It still works remarkably well, and it's usually used for recon, so to find out what systems people are using, what services, to gain information about projects and things like this. So, you know, it's highly effective and it still works, and this phone call usually demonstrates that quite well. So here it is. Hopefully this works.
Hello, Amy.
In what department?
Social media, copy, sort of, I guess marketing.
Okay, continue.
Hi, Charlotte speaking.
Oh, I was after Amy. She's around.
Amy
but have I got through to the right department?
Oh, no problem. I can pass you over. She's just sitting next to me.
Okay, well, maybe you can help. It's absolutely fine.
Not on the same team, so I'll just transfer you over if that's all right.
That's absolutely fine. That's
Great, thanks.
No problem.
All of your...
Hello?
Hey, is that Amy?
Yes, speaking.
Amy, it's John from First Choice IT. How are you?
Hi, good, thanks.
Yeah, good. We're just doing a bit of database work at the moment with you guys. Just checking Windows accounts and all that kind of stuff. I just want to double check. Have you had...
Oh, did I just kill it?
Any issues logging in today at all?
No, no issues.
No issues? Okay, fantastic. When did you last log in today?
Sorry?
When did you last log in today? Were you logged in this morning?
Hello?
Were you logged in this morning? Have you logged in? What time did you log in today?
Twice, I think. It's been fine.
Twice? Okay, fantastic. And can I confirm your email address just so I can check the system to check if you've got any issues with the database?
Sure, it's amy.uk.
Amy.uk. And what's your Windows username? It's not your email address, it's different, isn't it? So
it's
fantastic. Have you changed your password in the last 30 days at all? This is a first day update. Okay, can you confirm the length of your password to me, please, as well, just so I can check?
The length of it?
Yes, please.
8.
8 characters. How many of those are uppercase?
None.
None. Okay, fantastic. Any numbers at all in there?
Yeah.
How many numbers, just so I can check? 2 numbers. Fantastic. Okay, let me just check. And you're logged in at the moment, did you say?
Yeah.
Okay, I can't see that. Okay, that's fantastic. Can you confirm what your password is, just so I can check the system, please?
I'm not really sure.
No, it's absolutely fine. We've got authorization from the head office, so it's absolutely fine. Say again, sorry? I'll just double check for you, so that's absolutely fine. Thank you for your time. Thank you. Cheers. Bye. Bye.
There you go. So that was that's quite an easy one, and I got quite a few passwords that day from different people. It's one of those things where it's quite easy to sort of sounds quite easy. Sometimes it can be. Someone's just asked a question: are there decent tools for cloning someone's voice, like deepfakes video call? There's something called Lyrebird. That was open source. I think it's open source. It's open source, created by University, I think Michigan. I think it was. There are a few other ones as well that are getting better. But yeah, deep faking someone's voice and actually using that with telephone spoofing software is actually quite powerful. Some of the tools are quite restricted now. For obviously open source ones are quite restricted. You have to get people to say certain phrases for them to be able to do that. But if you actually get enough of someone's video recording, you can actually get them to say those phrases and cut a video together. That basically means that you could get a pretty good replica of someone's voice. So yeah, there's some pretty good tools. Lyrebird, I think it's called. I'll try and find the link for it. I'm sure someone will find it. But yeah, Lyrebird's pretty good. But yeah, it requires minimal data. Yeah, it's pretty good. But it still requires certain phrases to be said. Whereas before, when it first came out, it came out with an ethics statement. It's hilarious. I should have put this into this presentation because it's great. And it wasn't going to get like abused within the first like month. Got absolutely abused, and then I think they closed the project down and made it sort of closed source for a bit, which is brilliant. And now I think it's open source again. But yeah, it's create a project and it gets abused immediately. Of course, again, this video I think people have seen. I still love this video, and it sort of gives you an idea of why it's so easy and how it's easy asking questions. You can go directly and ask someone's password, or you can kind of go around the houses a little bit to try and manipulate somebody by asking questions around their password, and then generally they'll give you that information as well, which I've done that quite a few times. So don't actually ask someone directly, ask them about a subject rather than their password, for example, and people will give you the information because people are helpful. People want to help. So yeah, it's pretty good.
Today we sent a camera out on Hollywood Boulevard to help people by asking them to tell us their password, and this is how that went.
We're talking about cybersecurity today and how safe people's passwords are. What is one of your online passwords currently?
It is my dog's name and the year I graduated from high school.
Oh, what kind of dog do you have?
I have a Chihuahua Papillon.
And what's its name?
Jameson.
Jameson. And where'd you go to school?
I went to school back in Greensburg, Pennsylvania.
What school?
Hempfield Area Senior High School.
Oh, when did you graduate?
In 2009.
Oh, great.
It's like my cat's name and then just like a random number.
Okay. Have you had this cat for a while?
Yeah, she's my childhood pet.
Aw. And what's her name?
Her name is Jolie.
Jolie.
Mm-hmm.
So like a password of yours would be Jolie and then a number.
Yeah.
Like number 1?
Like my birthday.
Oh, when is your birthday?
June 12th.
Oh, nice. And what year were you born?
95.
Oh, great.
Mm-hmm.
So Jolie, 6, 12, 95.
Yes.
Got it.
So you mean to give my password right now? No, I cannot do that.
But we all want to know what it is so we can tell you if it's strong or not.
Oh my goodness. Let me think. Okay, one is Tel Aviv. Yeah. 468, and then Israel. It's only 3, but it's for me it's strong enough.
Ireland, 1, 2, 3, 4. Gemma, 1, 2, 3. Spelled Gemma.
Well, most of them are Italian.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Like
so
what? Like what's a good Italian password?
My grandma's name.
What's your grandma's name?
Maria.
Maria. So Maria is your password?
Oh yeah, now you know my password. Oh, yeah.
Brilliant, love that. And so like again, you can ask questions around stuff to kind of get this thing. It's brilliant, love it. Only person that actually said that, I'm sure there was plenty that actually didn't say anything, but that's how it works. Right, where's this working? Right, so like I spent a lot of my time doing the physical social engineering kind of process. So I have broken into many landmarks, buildings, corporates, banks, you name it, government sites, a whole range of things. And obviously case study wise, I can't talk about any company names or anything like this because obviously NDAs and stuff like this, so I won't do that, but I'll talk about some of them that I have talked about in other talks I've done where I can talk about what I did and how it worked. For me, it's about, again, it's about that target selection. It's about that OSINT. It's about, understanding the same kind of process. So, what do I know about that building? And there's a load of, if you've got US buildings, all the building plans are online. Land Registry in the UK is fairly good. There are some other sites you can use as well for finding out intelligence on buildings. Lots of mapping and satellite software and Google Maps and Street View and all that kind of stuff is really good for just getting a kind of broad view of that organization and a broad view of their kind of layout of the building, any potential controls they may have and things like this. Obviously that doesn't be actually turning up and doing physical recon. So obviously you need to do that as well, but obviously be wary of the things like their CCTV camera. So if you suddenly start turning up at night, you're going to be flagged the next day if you're walking around their building at night and then suddenly turn up in the morning, they're gonna flag you up. So recon is quite important. Physical recon is quite important, but obviously it's got to be done in an appropriate way and an appropriate time. So if they're in a building that say has it's in a very busy area, like in a city, and obviously that's easy for you to sit outside having a coffee, potentially on a phone call to observe how people enter the building and how they leave the building. I've done many where I've sat outside the day before, started listening to conversations. I even recorded as part of my recon someone talking about project names, just standing outside their building and caught project names. They were talking about not just the project name, they were talking about what the project name actually meant, and they were talking about specifics. And for my 15-minute listening to their conversation, I had enough to work out what that project was, and actually was able to then look into it and found some information online that was relating to like news articles about bidding and stuff like this, and contracts. And so it was quite interesting. So yeah,
I have a question in the chat.
Yes, go for it.
About the physical entry tools, and do you always carry one? Is there one that is most important and most useful that helps you bypass?
Depends on. So a lot of the time I rely on obviously the social engineering aspect to get in, but tools that are always quite useful to have is a piece of acetate or something like that you can use if they've got certain certain so some of the buildings I've looked at in the past have like electronic sensors on the inside, motion sensors that automatic open doors. So that's a trick that's very old as the book. You can just put a piece of acetate through and wave it around and opens the door. That's quite useful. Lock picks are still quite useful. I have a thin bit of bendy plastic I use to kind of slam into doors and to bypass certain locks and open locks and things like this. Yeah, I have quite a few of them. Do I have them in this bag? I don't know if I still have them in this bag. Obviously lock picks and things like this, and I don't have them in this bag. It's a shame. Yeah, and yeah, I have like a weird set of toolkits, but really RECON is the way that I will work out what to bring with me. So whether it's if I'm going for badge cloning, I might look at prox marks and things like this. If I'm going for whatever it may be, the situation determines the tools. But yeah, lock picks and a piece of acetate are kind of low tech ways of getting into a lot of places. 90% of the time, I'm not looking at breaking in as a burglar would. I'm looking at to social engineer my way in. But there are certain circumstances where you need to pick locks quite quickly, and so those kind of tools are quite useful.
So your brain is the most important tool then?
Yeah, pretty much, because I'm looking to create a scenario where I'm in, and then of course, and then it's all about outfits and things like this. So your dress code. I think people mentioned like I've gone in as delivery people before as well. There's a whole range of things you can look at. So you've got to have the appropriate, again, logos, credibility logos, the right t-shirts, the right gear to fit in, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's I've even seen people. I haven't done this myself. It's one of the projects we're going to do. Is like I know people that have got and bought a van and got stickers on the van to make it look like a BT van, open reach van, and stuff like this. Walking with the tools. It depends on the scenario. Where you're looking to get into. The one for me that tailgating, and tailgating properly works. Badge cloning works. Again, you have to do your RECON, right? And if you find people posting badges, usually there's information on those badges in some cases that tell you what make and model they use, what encryption algorithms they may use as well. So you can actually work out whether you can actually clone that badge and it will actually work. So there are a whole range of things you can do. I don't always go badge cloning. In fact, it's not the most common thing I do. I have done it and I do it fairly frequently. But really for me, it's if you can get in through just basic tailgating and you get in, then you don't need to go high tech because you prove the least common denominator and the least complex and sophisticated way of getting to a building. Then you don't need to test the other things. You can then, after that, you can then do a physical security audit. So once you've gotten in and you've proven you can get in and you've got to the objective, then you can announce yourself, say, I've done this is what I've done, to your contact, and then you can come back and then do a physical security audit and look at, okay, so what controls do you have in place? How was I able to get in? Could I, what kind of badge reading technology do you have? And then you can start looking at their physical security controls that way. If you don't get in, if you realize that tailgating isn't going to work, or your social engineering attack isn't going to work, then you have to try something a bit more sophisticated. That's when badge cloning and that's when some of the other kind of more infiltration type techniques come in a bit later on. So it just depends on the scenario, sophistication of the client. So a good example is a landmark that I did, I can't talk about, where they had everything, right? So their badges are pretty well, using very strong encryption. They were really hard to clone. In fact, I had to visually clone them, but I couldn't actually clone the actual. I could try to clone the badges, but it didn't work. So I managed to perfectly replicate the badge, and yeah, I got in visually a couple of times, but then I couldn't get in any further. I had to tailgate the rest of the time. So I said it would be very hard to get in. Even I was very lucky to get in because it was very busy, and I kept doing my badge and I kept scanning it, and they broke their process and let me in. Because I said this badge is not working. I went, oh, okay, fine, get a new one. And so I'm late for a meeting, so I used authority and so I need to get to this meeting now. I went, okay, fine, your badge looks okay, just hand it in later. So they broke their own protocol, which is fine. That's what I'm there to do. And then I tested the process later and said, well, look, obviously I've tested, I can get in, but I want to test what a visitor badge actually gives me, because I saw lots of visitor badges and I saw lots of people walking around this building, visitor badges. So I came back the next day. So it's like a 5-day gig. I came back the next day and said, look, I want to test with a genuine visitor's badge. What does it give me access to, and what can I do? So I came back, and this time I brought rucksack with me in case I need to get into other places that a visitor badge wouldn't let me into. I got in and they checked my bag, and I got in and walked around, and I worked out that the visitor's badge actually gave me access to every single part of the building. It was really weird. And so I double checked with my contacts and said, look, are you sure this is a visitor's badge? I don't have like all access granted. No, it's a visitor's badge. I went, you do realize I have been everywhere in this building? They went, well, that shouldn't be the case. And I was like, no, I can go everywhere. So can you double check my badge? He went, no, it's a visitor's badge. I went, I've been everywhere. I can get to the boardroom. I can get on every single floor. I can get into other companies that are in this building's part of this particular building. They're like, well, you shouldn't be able to do that. I was like, but I can. It's a massive risk. So if someone does get in, this is bad. And then also they had a bag checking policy. And so I was like, right, so I'll test the bag checking policy. So if I keep coming in and out and become familiar, are they going to keep checking my bag? So if I can come out and there's multiple entrances, so I kept trying different entrances, do they check my bag every time? I'm not going to offer them to check my bag. I'm just going to try and get in. And if they say, oh, we need to check your bag, that's great. And I worked out after a couple of times that they were like, oh no, we've seen you, that's fine. They should check my bag every time. So if I go outside, I could put something into my bag. I could have walked out with something, which is even worse, which I did eventually. So I worked out that this particular place here, they had, they breached their own policy, and a really important policy, given the type of building they were, that I could have put something in my bag and walked into the building. That could have been an explosive device. That could have been, anything, right? So it's not just about testing whether someone can get in. It's about the testing the policy, the process that someone has, because that's just as important. So if they have got a bag checking process, do they actually follow it? Do they actually follow it always? Is there a way that you can exploit that through familiarity if you're already in? Because you can get in first time, that's great. You've proven you get in. You then show yourself being really visible, pretend to be on the phone, trying to go out for a smoke, whatever it may be. And then they become familiar with you. You should be here. And that's the point when an attacker might then exploit that. So, it's making sure that people always follow the process. If they've got a process to check bags, then they should always check bags, regardless of how many times you've been in and out. And that's the kind of thing that, we try and test and try and brute force and try and break. And this is a great example of this, right? So this is a real CCTV. I have a whole collection of CCTV images, but this is the only one I can really show. They're for my own personal consumption because I'm a bit weird. And so you look at, this one I used a process where I was able to look at someone's how can I put this? Look at someone's website, and I found that as part of that website, they had a kind of careers page. On the careers page, I found out they had a staff shuttle bus, and it was a very secure site actually. And I realised that there was a staff entrance and doing some recon, and so the staff shuttle bus dropped people outside their staff entrance, and I was able to get in that way. And so I rode staff shuttle bus, had to social engineer my way onto that, but that wasn't very difficult. And once I was on it, of course, then you're treated as trusted. So I just walked around, and you can see me in the light coat. That's me there. And I was able to walk in pretty much straight away into the staff entrance, which dropped me in behind the barriers. There's no barriers there. That was the way in. And I spent like the rest of the day there pretty much, well, a few hours pretty much. There's a whole story behind this, how this guy actually saw me tailgate, decided not to report me for a couple of hours. So, it's kind of one of those situations where, it's quite difficult. So I was chased down by guards for a bit. I didn't realize until like an hour into the kind of infiltration that I was actually, they notified who and noticed I was actually in the building. And sometimes you can do things like change your outfits. That's quite a useful tactic. So if you have a coat, take the coat off, break into a locker or something, and then put your coat in there. Hopefully it'll be all right. You should be going in after a certain time. You can check lockers. They're not always occupied. Secondly, you could put your coat in your bag or something like that and change the top a couple of times, throws people off the scent. So looking for certain things. So maybe put a different color top on altogether so people don't realize who you are. There's kind of things you can do, put glasses on, not wear glasses, just small things to throw people off the scent slightly. Take a different pair of shoes with you, that throws people off as well. But primarily, it was, I managed to talk my way out of it for a bit, then I got caught, and then I had to spend a lot of time in a meeting room explaining who I was, because the person that my sponsor was actually on holiday, incidentally, and the person he left me in contact was also unavailable as well. So I spent many hours in a meeting room just waiting for someone to actually let me out, even though I had a genuine letter. Like, well, we don't trust that letter. We need to hear it from the contact, because you could have faked that letter. I was like, yeah, that's a good point. So that was fun. I've been caught a few times, and that's always good fun. You can talk your way out, deliver a fake letter, all that kind of stuff, but it just depends on the situation. For me, sitting in a toilet cubicle is actually a really good form of intelligence gathering as well. You can hear people's conversations, you can hear people talk about certain things. It's a bit creepy, it's a bit weird, but I have done it. It's also a great time if you break into a building. It's the first place you go. In a toilet cubicle, give yourself 10 minutes just to calm down the nerves, just to chill out a bit, and just to kind of get into character. Double check your notes, anything you might have, double check your process, where you're going, orienteer yourself. So it is a great place to go. And also I've had overheard some very interesting conversations in the toilet as well. Just people chit-chatting and stuff, which was quite nice.
We do have a question.
Yes, go on.
What if you crack or hack the building management system and create your own access card? Would that work?
Yes, I've heard of people doing that. I've also delivered phishing attacks where we've actually managed to do that, and actually either get access to the building management systems or gain access to the front of desk building management system, and then able to create ourselves an appointment or telephone social engineer our way an appointment in as well. So yeah, I've heard of people do that. Obviously, you've got to confirm that's in scope, because obviously that's potentially a third-party system, and you don't want to be doing anything that's not in scope. So everything has to be within scope of any kind of assessment. But yes, those kind of things like USB drops, things like that, you can do, and usually it's a front desk that plug them in anyway. But yeah, that's a legitimate attack vector. But you've also got to be careful if it's not in scope, then of course that's a bad thing, right? You don't want to be breaking the law and finding yourself in trouble. So yeah, if you're going to do that, make sure it's in scope, or confirm that it's part of the scope. Where am I? Oh, I'm in phishing. Okay, I'm pretty good at the moment. Any more questions? Because I've got about half an hour, and I think I've probably just over halfway through my presentation. Just over. God, I've got to move. Any questions? Any more questions?
You guys can voice them yourselves as well. Don't be shy.
Okay, so I talked about the bank job in the US a little bit, and I'm conscious of time, so I'm not going to go too much into it. But I have a couple of case studies that I'm going to probably skip over a little bit, because people probably heard them before. There's a podcast if you want to know. But I did an exact same simple email, the simplest phishing email in the world, actually, the simplest. Because I had to break into a US bank a fair while ago, and I had to work out, not being a UK bank and not having any UK customers, I had to work out how to do it. And the easiest way for me to do it was to send a phishing email to work out the level of security awareness in each branch. And it was a really simple, like similar to this. I couldn't find the actual final one, so I used this in another presentation. I just changed the IP address to Russia, because that usually works in America. And they clicked on it. 100 emails sent, and I think 65 or 64 people or something clicked on it within the first 20 minutes or something. And I worked out the IP addresses of all the branches, and then worked out, okay, they're the branches that clicked the most. So I flew over, and then my pretext was pretty much, I'm here to investigate a breach. And set of phishing emails have been flown over because my colleagues in the US are really busy, and we're trying to help your other branches. And I didn't say which company I was from. I just said my name. They checked some ID, and I was in. And that was it. Within 3 minutes of walking to a branch, I was in behind the counters. It was that quick. And because the pretext kind of worked, there wasn't really any other pretext I could work out, bearing in mind I can't do a very good American accent. So I guess if you want to become a really, really, really good social engineer, learn accents. I can do some, right? And I can do some good accents, but you need to, that's a really good skill to have. So yeah, although the Americans do love a British accent, so it kind of works as well. That kind of worked. I just charmed my way in. It was quite easy at that point once I was behind there. And I got loads of information, loads of intelligence, and I did that for a couple of branches, and I did get caught. Oh, I didn't get caught. I got challenged on the third branch, but I managed to talk my way out of it. Or I thought I talked my way out of it, and they actually had taken some details and CCTV images of me and all this kind of stuff, and I ended up on their wanted list for a bit, and there was an APB called out against me. And of course, because only one person knew about this, and that was the CISO, they didn't. I guess the best way to put it is they didn't actually. They didn't get notified initially. So this was kept going on for ages. And of course, when they did a company-wide, sort of branch-wide notification of my CCTV image of me, description of the British guy, all this kind of stuff, it kind of triggered alarms of people that I'd been into the branches with, and they'd reported it and said, oh, he'd been in here and he'd been behind the computers, he was very friendly and all this kind of stuff. Was he not supposed to be here? And then that got elevated into a major incident. So when I finally actually broke into head office, which again was actually quite simple, it wasn't that difficult because there was an easy way in, and it was a public entrance, and then there wasn't actually access control on the lifts, but only on the actual floors of where this place was. I managed to tailgate behind there and get in quite easily, so it was quite an easy job to get into. So when I actually finally got there, I got the phone call from the CISO, and he said, oh yeah, you need to come to head office. And I was like, oh, I'm already here. I'm on the third floor. It's like, oh, okay, right. Well, I'll come and get you then. And that was it. And we got into a conversation about it. I was quite surprised. And then he told me about what happened, and I thought I was in trouble, but I wasn't. But it was that they said you realize there was an APB out for you for about 6-7 hours or something, and we had to cancel it because we didn't realize this was happening, and all that kind of stuff. So it kind of showed an issue with reporting mechanisms between the physical security teams and the cyber teams and all this kind of stuff. So it was quite good. It was a good kind of process to go through. Being wanted by the US police, not such a good process to go through. I don't think I want to do that again. Yeah, I didn't know at the time, but afterwards when I had to get on a flight, I was a bit nervous. Like, am I actually going to get through TSA? Is that actually going to happen? Am I actually going to get through? They said, oh, it'd be fine. And it was, but you never know, do you? It's always good fun. Any questions at all?
Yes, there is one
Yeah.
about the phishing email.
Yeah.
Why do you think the suspicious activity angle works so well?
I think in this particular situation, because it was quite political as well, it was, there was lots of talk about lots of cyber attacks. Everything was about Russia. And, so that worked quite well. They do kind of work because you get people are used to getting them as well. That was the angle. A lot of people are used to getting these things, and they're likely to check it if it's well worded, timing, things like this. It just works. Security alerts. We worry someone's logged into my account. I didn't log into my account, and people click it. As long as it's worded correctly, I find it works quite well. There are certain circumstances where it doesn't, when you get it wrong and the timing's wrong, or someone reports it and things like that, and that's always good. Or it gets stopped. I do a lot of my phishings. I don't do whitelisted. I try and see if I can get past a lot of controls to prove a real world situation. So I'll register a new domain. I'll wait a little bit of time. I might use an Office 365 account or something like that, because that way you can actually it trusts a little bit better than just using some random mail client and things like this. So it just depends. But yeah, again, if you're whitelisted and you're doing a phishing campaign, of course that's a lot easier, and you're then relying purely on the email getting through to the targets. But yeah, it just kind of works. I think it's like people are more likely to respond to it if it's coming to their work email address, it's from a service they use, and it looks obviously malicious, like there's someone has maliciously logged into their account. You'd want them to call the support desk, right? But a lot of times they don't. And sometimes I do email attacks from the support desk as well. So phishing attacks on the support desk, and look at their ticketing systems they might use and stuff like this, and try and again try and do like the replicate that kind of internal attack. It just depends. But yeah, you can do phishing campaigns, and I've had conversations with people about this. You could send an email like get your free turkey during Christmas time, and people will just click it, right? It doesn't have to be very sophisticated. People just click it, right? It's not a real. I've tried to look at the measurement factors for effectiveness of phishing. You could send 3 phishing emails, right, to the same group of people, and different people will click on each one. and some people click none of them. That's great. And some different sets of people click on each one. It could be a timing thing. It could be they're actually just suddenly free and it's coming at the time where they're not actually busy, or it could be something that interests them. You know, they're all those kind of generic ones. When you start getting specific, that's where it gets a bit more, you know, you're in the upper 80s of success rates. If you're doing spearfishing, you're really going to something specific, then that's when it gets interesting. But generic kind of blanket kind of phishing emails, the measurement factor shouldn't be on the click-through rate, in my opinion. It should be on the reporting rate, because that's the measurement of success of a campaign. Yes, you want people to click it and you want to catch people out, but actually, really, what we want to measure is, and this is where the industry needs to shift a little bit, is the amount of people that reported it, because then it shows that your training's working. It shows that you know that the people are potentially going to stop these type of things from spreading across your organization and stuff like this. So yeah, that's kind of my hot take. Also, I love this meme, by the way. It was great. I still love this one. It's one of my favorites. But yeah, you know, it's kind of one of those things, right? And I talk about toolkits, right? So if I'm doing any kind of social engineering, this, you know, I'll use like any kind of data dump service to do recon on people. I'll use the social engineering toolkit, or maybe any other tool to deliver phishing attacks. There's a whole range of things. There's like Social Fish. There's a whole range of like open source, Go Fish. Yeah, you can use whatever really, or build your own.
On that, there is a question. Maybe
oh yeah.
Maybe you just answered it. Any good online sources to check or practice phishing campaigns?
Yeah, yeah, so Go Fish or Social Fish or Social Engineering Toolkit, obviously really good. Make sure you have permission to do it before you start sending phishing emails and anything like this. Really big disclaimer, so don't just start randomly phishing people, please, because that's bad. But if you want to test those kind of campaigns and what's out there, I can put together a list of open source tools. The open source stuff's okay. The commercial tools like the FishMe and stuff like that are okay. Again, I mean, I personally love the social engineering toolkit, because you can start dropping in some exploits and things like this into those phishing attacks, and you can build some quite cool attacks. That's pretty good. A big shout out to Dave Kennedy for creating that. But you know, there are many tools you can use. I'll see if I can generate a list of phishing tools and drop it into the when I shared some of these slides. I'll drop some resources into there as well. But yeah, there are plenty.
Cool. I do have a question.
Oh, okay.
I remember from studying to CIPP exam for US. In some states, pre-texting is illegal.
Mm-hmm.
Is it? And how do you do your due diligence before you do a job in a different country? Do you rely on the contract, or do you do your own due diligence?
Yeah, so first of all, yeah, we always do due diligence on any engagement. We all stay within the law. That's very important. There's obviously that case where those two security researchers got arrested for basically doing something outside of scope, or loosely outside of scope. So anything that we do has to be within scope. And I've massively on this, and I think it's a big thing as part of it. If you're a pen tester, or if you're a independent pen tester, or if you're a social engineer, you have to go by the scope, right? Scope is really important. So yeah, understanding the local laws of where you're doing it. So I generally only do UK, Europe, and US. I have been asked to do stuff further afield, like in the Middle East and stuff like this. I'm always a bit like, it's you've got to really look at the engagement and really look at what they're asking for. In some cases, what they're asking for could be potentially not illegal, but if it's not planned correctly and you kind of, you could get in trouble, right? So yeah, the US, I know some states, some of these type of things are potentially considered to be illegal, but then if you look at the CFFA, which is the obviously the equivalent of the Computer Misuse Act in the UK, the law is quite grey out there, but you don't want to be treading anywhere near any of those kind of laws. So yeah, look at the national laws and the state laws, and check everything you're doing is all within the law, and confirm with the client that they have actually read the same laws and they're happy. It's all about permission, consent. If the company has given you permission and they've, and as part of those legal documents and contracts and things like that, that's what you go by. It's all about consent. So as long as you have that, that's what counts, commercially as well as legally.
Cool, thank you.
How am I doing for time? Am I okay? Apparently I've got
We have 15 minutes, but we are not too strict on time.
Okay, cool. Okay, great. So yeah, okay, so there's a couple of things. I'll skip over this case study because I think I'm going to run out of time. So basically, case study, I think we know about this one. There was a pen tester, a hacker, sorry, not a pen tester, a hacker that hacked into Capital One in the US. They publicly posted it on Twitter. They also hinted at it quite a few times. Someone actually found out about it. And then also when they got investigated by the FBI and other intelligence agencies, they realized that they had linked all of their personal information to their GitHub profile, which then had their CV on it, which had also a meetup page, their home address, their telephone number, all this stuff. It was great. And, you know, that's what happened. They actually got, you know, they got raided because they made a bit of an OPSEC fail. And this is kind of talk about, you know, all this information about your posts or your images or your email accounts. You need to think about, even from a defense point of view, what you're doing and how you're doing it, and you know where you could be exposed. So it's all the kind of stuff that we talk about, like, you know, what dumps you're in, look at your social circles, groups you're part of, such as meetups and things like that. So you can, you know, it's lots of information an attacker can gain on you, and it's the kind of defense side of things, really. Now make sure that your images online are not you know, you actually look at your images and thinking about, okay, well, is there any EXIF data, so any metadata that can be used to work out what devices you use or where you took that you know, location data, because not social media doesn't always strip it out. That's quite important. What information is in the background? Is that kind of useful? How useful is it? You know, so don't, like, obviously take photos on TV or have, you know, passwords and things like this. See this all the time, right? Or don't, like, put your work badges online and things like this. We see this a lot, right? There's a lot of stuff out there that allows you to kind of do that, right? And you can search for badges, and God, there's so many of them out there. People still do it. You'd think at this day and age people stop sharing their badges, but they do. And that's just a great intelligence source for people. And then of course, you know, if you think about like the private and public information that's out there, you know, try and work out what information is public, should be public, and then what information that is private, right? And try and work out the two. Try and work out, you know, what, for example, you know, if information is public and is it useful for an attacker? If it's not, brilliant, regularly review it. If it's useful for an attacker, then obviously start identifying it and delete it or poison it or make it private if you can. And then try and kind of do that with your private information. So that you think is quite private, is it actually public? Confirm if it's public. And then of course, again, have you identified it, and kind of move into this kind of process of sort of OPSEC, which is kind of operations security, where you can start thinking about denying the adversity, denying the adversary information about you. So that's looking at, again, using OSINT, analyzing that data. So look at the what, when, why, where, who type stuff about yourself. And then looking at what countermeasures you can apply to it. And I wrote a couple of articles on this, which I obviously will share because they're quite useful. But really, you've got to be thinking about.
We have 2 questions.
Oh, wow. How many?
2.
2, okay.
On location settings for apps, if you select allow when using the app, does that mean active use or sharing location even when the app is running in the background?
You need to check the apps and what because sometimes it's actually when it's in use, and sometimes it can be running in the background. There's a talk that I watched yesterday which shows you how to link up your apps to like Wireshark and your computer and stuff like this. And it was a really good talk, and I should probably share that because actually it will show you step by step. It was a Medium post actually on how to do it. You should definitely look at linking up your phone through Wireshark and through your machine, and actually looking at what data your apps share, because you'll see it's a lot. So yeah, if you disable location services, in most cases that will block location data being shared, but then sometimes the app might not scrape out EXIF data when you post images, for example, in some cases. So you've just got to be careful. But yeah, usually it's active. And if you look at like Google, for example, all the Google apps, like it's constantly beaconing your location, constantly tracking your location. So, you know, you want to disable all of those kind of location services as much as you can. and again, you want to kind of start sort of stripping out your advertising IDs so they can start building algorithms on you. Again, I've got lots of posts on how to do that. But yeah, sometimes it's active, sometimes it's kind of passive. When you're posting stuff, it might pick up your location. It depends on the app and depends on what they're using location services for. So obviously mapping data, obviously maps, they're going to use it all the time, right? Whereas maybe social media might only use it when it's actually active or when you're actually posting something. So it's about the context of when they use location data and what they use it for. If some kind of game wants to know your location data, obviously that's a big red flag. You'd be like, well, why does it need to know that? Right. So, you know, context is quite important. Unless it's like Pokemon Go or something like that, then that's quite important, right? But outside of that, you shouldn't be. There was another question as well, yeah?
Yeah. What the second question was, what do you mean by poison it?
That is a very good question. Poisoning your data is posting like fake data about yourself. So it's so for example, if my date of birth is the 1st of the 1st, 1970, I wouldn't use that anywhere, right? I'd use another date of birth. I'd use fake names, fake information about myself when I sign up to new sites. At one time, use email addresses. I might post false flags, so false information. I might create like canary tokens and things like this in certain files, such as I might create like a bunch of password files that have got canary tokens in to see if someone's trying to access my data. I might like post like a bunch of like fake accounts in my name and post lots of disinformation to throw people off track. It's kind of sending the attacker down the wrong path. It's basically, as the very name says, it's injecting data into your data to make it poisoned, basically. So you're trying to throw an adversary off the scent, sorry. Yeah.
Creating a half lie.
Yeah, or a full lie in some cases, right? So lots of false flags and things like this. I'm conscious of time. I know I can run over slightly, but I obviously don't want to too much. Things you want to think about. So for me, like when you're doing like investigations into yourself, you want to think about like obviously using or if you're investigating a target, or you're worried about your privacy. Obviously, a good VPN is quite good to have in place. Ideally ones that don't leak logs. I did posted an article that shows you all the VPN. You can actually use it against your VPN. It will show you whether it leaks any metadata, any logs and things like this. There's some quite nice tools out there to do that. But you want to think about, you know, VPNs that actually give you that peace of mind. That's good privacy in place. I use Mulvad. That's pretty good. Proton VPN's okay if you go for their premium version. Mulvad I like because you can send cash in the post or pay with Bitcoin, or you know, wherever it may be. It's pretty good. And to sign up, they just give you an ID. That's it. You don't have to enter an email address or a password. It's just an ID and everything's attached to that ID. So if you just want to burn your identity, you can just create a new ID, pay another $5, and you've got a completely new ID. They don't know who you are. Unless you pay with PayPal or something like that, then they would do. But outside of that, if you pay by cash or you pay by Bitcoin, there's complete, you know, anonymity in that sense. So that's quite good. Browsers and things like this, obviously Firefox and Brave are best for privacy, or better for privacy. Have some good extensions for OSINT. I can share those as well. Excuse me, I'm going to lose my voice. Excuse me. Obviously, Kali Linux has some good, and recently has added some good tools for OSINT and things like this. One of my favorite OSINT tools is Sherlock Project for usernames and things like that. It's pretty good. Multigo, obviously we talked about visualization, can actually help with investigation. And for not a free tool, but a pretty good tool for investigation and case management is Hunchly. Recommend it. Big shout out to Justin Size, really good tool. And of course, if you want to start looking at yourself, start with the basic simple Google search on yourself. So your name, and then maybe go in text your name, in URL your name, file type, you know, doc in text your name, and start building out the search handles and parameters for your name, just to really build out. And then maybe try your email address, your name, and try some other bits, and maybe reverse image search your details is quite useful. Obviously Dorking also works on Shodan. That's pretty good. Some cool stuff you can do with Shodan. I love Shodan. It's a brilliant website, especially for like webcams and things like this. But yeah, I'm conscious of time as well, so I want to kind of move on. so defensive stuff as well. You want to think about like creating compartments. So we talked about the information that's out there on you. You want to make it harder for an attacker to piece together the information on you. So you want to kind of split out your email addresses, have different email addresses for different things. I actually generate an email address with a random string using a password manager for all my email addresses. So I might have like 50 email addresses. I don't know what each one's used for. I have different password managers, which tells me. So I have one password manager, I have like 3 or 4 password managers, and different, like an offline one, maybe one online one, and then some like other ones that I use for different things. So you split your risk across like not having one password for everything. You have different passwords, but at the same time, you also spread your risk of having lots of email addresses. So if an attacker gets one email address, okay, that's bad, and they've done a lot to get through that, by the way, as well. But at the same time, you spread your risk to some degree, and you're not giving away and attributing yourself to that email account as well. So try and spread the risk across different email accounts if you can. Obviously, you want to be like this. You want to kind of just like hide, disappear. I do love this GIF. It's one of my favorites. Anyway, so yeah, you want to kind of disappear and hide and make it hard for an attacker to attribute to you. And again, like, thinking before you share, like really important. That video earlier on kind of highlighted that. But yeah, just think about what you're sharing, how you're sharing, and what an attacker might take from that based upon all the information you've already found on yourself. So every time you're sharing, is this giving an attacker a bit more about me? Is it actually, actually helping and all that kind of stuff? Actually build a profile. So yeah, this is quite important. And then of course, kind of like building on that, create compartments, kind of that also build a risk assessment on yourself as well. So once you've created compartments, you want to then do a risk assessment to kind of work out, well, okay, what information is there about me? Can I find it all quickly? Is it stored with a third party? Can I accept the risk? Is my data encrypted? Do we think it's secure? I don't know. Who knows about my sensitive data? What's the impact if that's data is publicly stolen? Can I accept the risk? Kind of just really do a risk assessment on yourself a little bit, because that helps you think about the kind of defense, and of course the final defense against the kind of social engineering type stuff is like, just verify. Like don't trust but verify. Like verify and then actually verify again, and possibly verify again if you really want to. Like if they're asking for force of action, is this kind of normal? Is it urgent? Should it be? Do I usually get these emails? Is there anything unusual about them? If in doubt, don't reply to email. Obviously contact them, or don't click on links and emails and things like this. I always say this kind of stuff, but it's really important. Like if you think someone's asking you to log in to something, I know it sounds quite simple. We talk about this all the time, but if I'm being asked to log into my Google account that's been breached, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go to my Google account and check the security settings, right? I don't trust links and emails, or trust links online really very often. So they can be quite easily poisoned. There's some great reverse proxy tools out there as well that can also, you can use to kind of catch people's tokens and things like this by sending links. So you can poison even legitimate looking links as well. So there's a whole range of things out there that can really add, to that kind of mess. I was going to share a tool and resource just briefly that I created. Let me see if I can share my screen. Any other questions, by the way, while I'm here?
Yes,
I'm a little bit behind on the chat.
We do have a few, but I've silenced them until we finished. So what is an instance where you would use canary tokens in terms of subverting someone's OSINT on you? Is one of them.
So I use canary tokens in, so I have a couple of email accounts I've created, which I obviously, basically like honeypots essentially, and every email in those, I've got attachments like password lists, bank statements, things like that. They've all been spoofed as well. So I use that to kind of see if someone tries to attack. I'll get a notification. I don't actually use that email address for anything else apart from that. So I'll randomly send myself spoofed email addresses from certain things, look like a bank statement, look like a marketing email or something like that. And in that case, if someone clicks on it, I know that someone's actually tried to get into that email account. I purposely don't put 2FA on it and stuff like that. It really is nothing in there at all. It really is a burner email. It really is no use. Nothing's been signed up to. So there was very little someone could do with that. The password is unique. But yeah, that's it's kind of a way of kind of catching people out. And I have a number of those. I have about 10 honeypots I use for that as well. It's like, I call it my Home Alone project, my cyber Home Alone project. I set lots of traps, all over the place, different things. So yeah, it's pretty good.
There is another question, but I'll be honest, I don't understand the question so much. Any suggestions other than catalogs for leaking this addresses as leaks?
So where's the question?
This address is one word.
Okay.
6:53 p.m.
Okay, have a look. I'm trying to find it. Okay. Oh my word, I can't see it. Okay. Okay, it's just for the catalogs for leaking distance address. Okay. So that's a tough one. I'm gonna have to park that one because that's a difficult question to answer easily. There are obviously some sites you can use for that, but to be honest, it's not an easy process. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure I understand the context of the question as well. So we might want to ask it again, and then I'm pretty sure I understand what you're saying. But maybe if you want to just take that one offline, and I'll answer it over Twitter or something like that, because it's not an easy question to answer. But I think it is what it is.
So Twitter is the best way to ask your questions? Cool.
Yeah, there's also someone asked about prepaid credit cards that require sign up. There's quite a few. There's also I also recommend there's some sample credit card services as well that generate like for validate checking, so you can use those if you want to sign up to a service and not poison your data, and you can, a lot of those get validated but they don't charge. So yeah, there's quite a few credit card services, not credit cards, but prepaid card services that don't require you to fully sign up, for services. And I've got a list of those as well that I can share, but not here, if that makes sense. So if someone wants to reach out to me on Twitter, I'll share those services as well.
Thanks, Dan. And there is the Google Docs link, I believe.
Yeah, you've posted that in the chat, so that's fine. I'll just quickly share my screen on that. Hang on a second. New shared. I created this doc. If you haven't seen it, it's this one here. It's pretty good. I'll get rid of that there. Can everyone see that screen? Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. There's a whole range of services and solutions in here. It's pretty good. Some tools and some guides. There's social media. There's obviously public records, emails, images. There's a whole range of stuff in here. Van Gogh rating, still my favorite rating. Just check it out. There's some great stuff in there to like start building your own profile on yourself. I think there was a plan to also look at making this open source a bit more. So I might look at trying to do that as well, rather than having it as a Google Doc. So, but yeah, check that out. It's pretty useful. I've also got a challenge, which should talk you through as well. I need to stop sharing, don't I? Hang on a second. There you go, new share. Back to my presentation. Okay. There's also, I've got a challenge I've created, which I will drop that into the chat. Have a look at that. That's also a Google Drive. It's called DocStew. I've just talked about OPSEC. A lot of the stuff's actually real, but it's all publicly available, and it's all stuff I can't delete. So some of it's actually one thing I can't delete, as much as I've tried. So you might as well have some fun with that and see if you can see what you can do. I'm going to release these challenges as another challenge. I'm going to release hopefully end of this week or beginning of next week that follows on from this one, which are going to be slightly harder. It's just like an entry challenge, and there's going to be some harder ones as well. So have some fun with that. DM me the answer, see if you can find the final challenge. Should take about maybe last night. I think the record last night when I sent this challenge out was about 35-40 minutes, so it shouldn't take too long. If you know me, you'll be able to work out this quite quickly. If you don't know me, it's all publicly available information, so you should be able to find it. Yeah, that's it really. I think that's it. I think I'm conscious I want to finish on time, actually, more or less.
Nice.
Not hang on.
Nice challenge, thank you.
Yeah, if you've got any questions, I can take them now. If not, I can take them offline on Twitter or have a chat. So, and don't forget to reach out to me on Twitter or whatever it may be. So,
okay. How will the people get the link to the challenge?
I'll drop it. I dropped it in here, didn't I, earlier on? Oh God. Okay. Yeah,
oh, this one.
It's the Google Drive one. Yeah.
URYT. Okay. Yep.
I think it's that one there. Yeah, I think so. I was going to say I can share it again, or you can send it out to everyone who's attended. That's fine.
Thank you, Stu, so much, and thank you guys for all the good questions. You're so good. We've got twice the value. Thank you all so much. I will stop the live stream now.